Anyone out there who calls themselves a guru, run the other way. Those teachers, at times and many times and far too often, misuse their power and teach from a place of ego rather than love. But I'm going to warn people to make sure that in your heart you trust who you are following, you trust the messages that you are being led to. Everybody's got a microphone these days. But the question is, have they done the work to have their voice be amplified?
Gabby Bernstein, a role model for spiritual seekers.
So the intro for this show is that we did it backwards. We started the show with a question. And the question led to the spiritual principles that have had a profound impact on my life, the principles of a metaphysical text, A Course in Miracles, which led to the next question about teachers of these spiritual faiths and how those teachers, at times and many times and far too often, misuse their power and teach from a place of ego rather than love, which is quite the opposite of the teachings. And these two people who came through were beautiful guides for me to finally speak up and speak truth to my own experience of feeling terribly blindsided, broken, disappointed, and harmed in many ways by spiritual communities that did not speak truth. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to blame or shame, but I'm going to warn people to make sure that in your heart you trust who you are following, you trust the messages that you are being led to. Everybody's got a microphone these days. But the question is, have they done the work to have their voice be amplified? And so checking in as you show up for your own spiritual practice, checking in with yourself. Does this person resonate? Does this book resonate? Do these teachings resonate? Do I trust the human behind the message? And humans have mistakes. Humans can make mistakes. But when it comes to being a leader or a teacher in a spiritual community, there's no room for harm. There's room for mistakes, but there's no room for harm. And so if you've been amongst those communities and you've been disappointed by those communities and those gurus behind the messages that have done a lot of harm, I'm going to ask you to look to your own heart and look to the love that you experienced in those practices and the core messages of those practices, and release the attachment to the fear and the human and return to the message that only love is real. I'm excited for you to listen to this episode because it offered me an opportunity to get even more honest, be a little controversial, and tell the truth. Hi, Diana.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing really well listening to you. So that makes my day.
Great. I'm happy to be helpful to help you today.
Yeah. My sister and I both just finished doing the 21 days with you, and it was pretty profound for both of us. My question for you, because I've been listening to everybody, I've been listening to the whole series that you've been doing here, and my question, I have done the Course in Miracles and read the books, and I did work with other quote unquote spiritual leaders that were not of your caliber by any stretch of the imagination. But what ended up happening was it was people that were using the work in a not positive way, which left me with a bad taste in my mouth, so to speak. And I find it colors my thinking when I'm listening to things and, trying to move into a positive mindset. I go back to oh, well, that happened. And I remember that person saying that or doing that. And it's like, do I really want to listen to that again? Is that a good thing? And I guess what I want to do, and I find this with, even growing up and, hearing things and knowing that, as you get older, oh, that was not a good way to do things. How to move away from what is a negative mindset into a positive one and not take on stuff that happened, bad things that happened in the past, and bring it into the future.
As it relates to the abuse of spiritual power, is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I would say so. Yeah. Like, I don't know if I'd call them spiritual power, but just people using the
using
word
spirituality. So teachers who might use spirituality in a ego way.
That's nice way to
yeah. Well, it's interesting that I brought up A Course in Miracles as the messaging for this episode. The principles of A Course in Miracles are the through line of all spiritual faith, which is that through the experience of love, we can have a miracle, and that we can suspend our disbelief through a spiritual connection, through turning over our fears to a loving presence beyond our own, and experience forgiveness and miracles. All of that has been the through line of my life. But that messaging, when it is void of the human experience, can be kind of dangerous, right? And can be used in ways for power, like you've seen with your teachers, your former teachers, can be overlooking or shaming the human experience. And so I have this experience of having been a devotee of many spiritual paths, several of which, not the Course in Miracles, but two of which I won't speak of because of the leadership and the horrific shame that now is carried with that lineage. But that doesn't take away the core message of the spiritual faith. It doesn't take away from the principle of choosing love. And so, yes, there are teachers and healers and, I'm doing air quotes now, like self-proclaimed gurus.
Thank you. Yeah, because that's
right.
Definitely
Self-proclaimed gurus. Anytime somebody tries to call me a guru, I'm like, no. Self-proclaimed gurus that, God bless them, are seeking and searching and using the principles in a way that is destructive. But
using it for power.
Using it for power, using it for destruction, using it for financial gain, all of the above. But my love, don't let it take away the message. Don't let it take away the message. And that's really moving to me right now. It could almost bring me to tears because, the energy that I'm going to be open right now. Let's go there. I found God on a yoga mat in a Kundalini yoga class. And I got behind that. I signed up for the training 2 days later. I went all the way through hundreds of hours of training. I taught it. I was spokesperson for it, only to find that the man behind it was a violent sexual predator, financial stuff. It just goes on and on and on. Rapist, on and on. And so let's just get controversial here on Dear Gabby. Why are we gonna be quiet? Let's talk about it. I was a devotee of the work of a Brazilian medium who will remain nameless, but anyone who's in the spiritual world knows who he is, and had extraordinary spiritual awakening and connection in Brazil at the casa with which this man performed his spiritual work. For years, it cracked me open. I wrote about it in books. It gave me a direct line to my guides, only to just days after I gave birth to my son, find out that this man too was a violent sexual predator, terrible human. But even in the midst of witnessing the violence, the terror, the horrific audit and recap of what these humans did, I'm not going to let them take away the spiritual experience. I'm not going to let them ruin my awakening. And so I want this topic, while it is highly controversial, to really resonate with the listener, that sometimes you might be guided to something that feels true for you, but the person delivering the message is not in their truth.
No, their intention is not there.
And you know, I've turned my back on these faiths. I've turned my back. I'm going to be really brutally honest. I turned my back on the Kundalini community. I feel blindsided. I felt lied to. Turned my back on the community in Brazil. But my heart is still connected to the awakenings that I had.
Yeah, that's true. I did awakenings in the Course in Miracles within that.
Correct.
Circle.
So let's go back to that. So these teachers,
had, found out some pretty deep stuff.
That's right. So you may have experienced the work of these teachers who were not in their right mind and in their ego, but there was awakening that you experienced. And so we don't pardon the behavior, but we can, in our heart, look for the love, look for the awakening that was there for us.
Yeah. I think for me, what I tell people, the thing that got me was pardon my French on here, the mind of using the word to screw you up. So you're not being trusting, and you're not being loving, and you're not being this and that. And then I'd be like,
but it could even be more. What you're saying is really important because, you know, Course in Miracles is forgiveness and love and shifting your thinking. But, you know, if someone has raped you or someone has abused you, or we don't want to stick around.
No.
You know, the work may be that we ultimately choose forgiveness so that we don't carry the burden of that harm, but that does not mean that we don't care for ourselves. That doesn't mean that we don't ask for justice. And that doesn't mean that I won't say the name of these teachers ever again. I will not give their name breath. But I will.
I'm like that too.
Right? And so, listen, anyone out there who calls themselves a guru, run the other way. Okay, my love? And trust that you were guided to these practices to open you up to something. And that those messengers at the time were all that you had to have that experience.
Yeah, there was good. There was some good that I got out of it, but then it turned to not good. So then I walked from it. But on a happy note, I've listened to meditations I started doing this over 20 years ago, and your meditations are the only meditations that I can actually meditate to.
Oh, beautiful.
So,
beautiful.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the intention behind them, and that's why I can do that. So thank you.
That's right. That's right. I'm not your guru. I'm a raconteur. I have stories to share and experiences to offer. And my intention is to serve you. But truly my intention is to crack you open to how you can serve yourself.
Yeah.
I am happy that I've been able to support you in these ways. And I also want to recognize that the truth within you is what feels that truth within me. And I want to thank you for bringing up a topic that I probably wouldn't have brought up on my own, because it's time. I'm going to call it out. There are spiritual communities that have done a lot of harm. And we are living in a time where nothing can be hidden. Nothing.
No.
So if we're going to show up in the world, publicly or not, we got to show up with integrity.
Totally.
There's plenty of room for mistakes, but there isn't room for harm. There's room for mistakes, but there isn't room for harm.
That's good. I love that.
Yeah. I'm going to close the show on that now. Thank you.
Thank you.
So to close this episode, I'm going to thank you for listening. I'm going to thank you for recognizing your truth in these messages. I'm going to thank you for making a commitment to being on a spiritual path that is integrous and has commitment to serve and to love and not to harm. For those of you out there who are perceiving themselves as spiritual teachers, thank you for your commitment. And I'm going to ask you to really consistently look inward. What are my intentions? What are my intentions? What are my intentions? And when you notice that your ego is in the way, do whatever it takes to get back to consciousness. If your ego's in the way, put down the microphone, turn off the Zoom, get off the call, get back into alignment. But we can't mess with the energy. When we have the desire to be in the service of others through spiritual faith, which is anyone that's listening to this show, you're going to carry the message in your own ways. You have to make sure you're doing it through the energy of love, not through the energy of ego. It's really important. And so while you are here listening as a student, you're also a teacher, because you're teaching in your home and you're teaching in your bedroom at night when you're talking to your husband or your girlfriend or your wife or whoever, and you're teaching in your office, and you're teaching on your commute. That's the meaning of being a miracle worker. You're out in the world carrying the messages of love. So I want to make sure that this episode has given you the desire to live and lead from truth and love, and to be committed to checking in regularly with where you are leading from. And as long as you know you are leading from a place of truth, then you can trust that whatever comes through is exactly as it needs to be. Thank you for joining me today on Dear Gabby. If you like this video and you want to get more Gabby, check out the next one right over here.